One of the cool things about Pathfinder 2e is the fact that if you exceed a DC by more than 10, you get a critical success. That means you always have a motivation to get your modifiers as big as possible. So far, we've talked about 3 modifiers you can add to your d20 roll, but it's important to note that you can never add more than 1 bonus or penalty from each of these categories at once. Let's say you had a +1 sword and a +1 cape. Unfortunately, your item bonus would still only be +1. That means you want to get your modifiers from as many different categories as possible. The 2 other categories you can get modifiers from are status, like if you're sick or tired, and circumstance, like if you're attacking from a tree. 2 of the most common conditions you can inflict on an opponent are frightened and flat-footed. Frightened gives you a -1 to all checks and DCs, including their AC. Flat-footed gives you a -2 to AC. Because these 2 penalties come from different categories, they stack. That means if you can get an enemy to be flat-footed and frightened, their AC goes down by 3. The frightened condition always comes with a number, and that number is the penalty applied to all checks and DCs. Your frightened status goes down by 1 at the end of your turn. Let's look back at our combat cheat sheet. I think it's time we made it a little bit bigger. You can demoralize an opponent with an intimidation check that meets or exceeds their will DC. On a success, the opponent becomes frightened 1. On a critical success, the opponent becomes frightened 2. Let's say you and a friend were fighting a Colo. You might be tempted to use all 3 of your actions to strike 3 times in a row. If you demoralize for your 3rd action, you will actually end up doing more damage on average. One thing to note is that each character can only attempt to demoralize a given creature once every 10 minutes. You also have to speak the same language, or else you'll take a -4 penalty to your demoralize. Now let's talk about flat-footed. We already know one way to make the opponent flat-footed. That's flanking. There's another way, and that's by attacking them while you're hidden. Let's say you're locked in a battle with a Colo that's standing behind this strange rock formation. Let's ask ourselves, what are the circumstances? Does the Colo have cover? Between no cover, cover, and greater cover, all levels of cover use a pretty similar system. We've already talked about cover. Let's introduce another circumstance, visibility. Right now you can see the Colo perfectly and you know where the Colo is, so the Colo is observed. But what if the Colo is behind a cloud of smoke? The Colo could then be considered concealed, which means in order to attack him, you need to make a DC 5 flat check. A flat check is where you roll a d20 and have to meet or exceed the DC without any modifiers. It's essentially a fancy way of doing a fixed probability. Let's add a 3rd level of visibility, hidden. If the opponent is hidden, you have to succeed at a DC 11 flat check in order to attack them. As you can see, the concealed and hidden conditions have very similar mechanical effects, just like cover and greater cover. Let's say the Colo is standing here behind the rock formation and is hidden. First, the Colo is hidden, so to attack the Colo you would have to succeed at a DC 11 flat check. Even if you succeed that, the Colo still gets a +2 bonus from cover. 2 separate systems, cover and visibility, working in tandem. Now let's add a 3rd column. Do you know the square where the Colo is? If you don't, the Colo is undetected, and you have to guess. While the undetected condition isn't completely independent of the hidden condition, it actually helps to think of it that way. Even if you guess the right square, you still have to succeed at the DC 11 flat check. Then, even if you succeed at that, you still have to meet or exceed the Colo's AC, which could be affected by cover. The hidden condition has to do with Pathfinder 2e's stealth system, which is usually described with 4 levels. I would suggest not worrying about unnoticed for now. That usually only happens at the beginning of combat. You can gain the hidden condition on yourself by using the hide action. You can only use the hide action if you're already concealed or have some kind of cover. If you ever leave cover or stop being concealed, then you also will lose the hidden condition. You'll also lose the hidden condition if you attack. But if you attack while you're hidden, then the opponent is flat-footed. If you're not visible to the opponent for some reason other than cover or concealment, you also have the hidden condition. If you strike the opponent, they're flat-footed, but since you're still invisible, you still keep the hidden condition. Sneak lets you move at half speed, but you have to succeed at a stealth versus perception check. If you succeed, then the opponent doesn't know where you went, and you become undetected. What's important is that if you fail this check to sneak, you still remain hidden to the opponent, you just don't become undetected. Naturally, you also have to finish your sneak in cover. So what could someone do against a hidden opponent? The seek action lets you make a perception check against the opponent's stealth DC. If you succeed, you can make an undetected opponent only hidden, and you can make a hidden opponent observed. If you have an imprecise sense, such as smell, then you can use that to figure out what square your opponent is in, but they still keep the hidden condition. There's also an action called point out. If you know the square an opponent is in, but your ally does not, point out to let them know. Let's say you are fighting two Kolos, Carrie and Kristen. For your first action, you stride behind this rock. There's now greater cover between you and Carrie and regular cover between you and Kristen. You then use the hide action and successfully hide against both opponents. Then finally, you use the sneak action to sneak up closer to the opponents. You now only have cover. Let's say you only succeeded your sneak check against Kristen. You're now undetected to Kristen, but only hidden to Carrie. Now it's Carrie's turn. He uses seek and succeeds a perception check against your stealth DC. You are no longer hidden to Carrie. Carrie then uses a strike and only needs to beat your AC. As Carrie's final action, he uses the point out action. While you were undetected to Kristen, Kristen becomes alerted to your location. For Kristen's first action, she uses hide. On a success, she is now hidden from you. She then uses strike. Because she's hidden from you, you're flat-footed against her attack, although she still needs to succeed at a DC 11 flat check because you're hidden from her. Ouch. Then Kristen uses stride and steps right up next to you. When Kristen finishes her stride, you no longer have cover against each other. Without cover, you also lose the hidden condition. Let's introduce another way to become hidden. Create a diversion lets you make a deception check against their perception DC. Against any opponents you succeed the check, you become hidden to. However, it only lasts until the end of your turn. That means during your turn you have to decide whether you're going to strike against a potentially flat-footed opponent, or sneak away and become undetected. Let's say you succeed your diversion. Becoming hidden, you then sneak away, back behind this rock formation. With greater cover against Carrie and cover against Kristen, you can stay hidden. You can then use your third action to eat some cheese. With these tools added to your cheat sheet, you're now an advanced combat master.